Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today, Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. Did you do your homework and watch the debate last night?
I did. I did a little sarcastic tweeting as well.
Was it historic or was it entertaining or neither?
To be honest, I thought it was actually, I missed watching the second one live. I read the transcript, but I found it far more interesting than the first one, to be sure.
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting to a lot of people because we're getting near the end of this stuff.
True.
You
Maybe
know,
that's
a lot
what it
of
was.
people are now saying, sighing relief, when is this going to end?
Yeah.
Because, you know, my guess is now that early voting is occurring, not a whole lot of people are undecided. You know, but still, of course, I don't learn a whole lot from these as far as issues go. There is a bit of entertainment and anticipation, but it's still of interest to see how they react, because whether or not they are really, really apart, and I argue the case that the parties are much closer than they claim, but there's still things that they have to, engineer so that they show that there's a sharp difference. Now, the portion of the debate last night that caught my attention that I found most fascinating was when the issue came up of the emails and Russia's involvement and Hillary's challenge that Putin and Trump are buddy-buddy, and they're orchestrating this, and they work with Assange, and they are really the ones that are they're the ones who are rigging or manipulating the election. And the reactions were interesting because there was a bit of difference, because Trump, said that, he doesn't even know Putin. He's not involved in that at all. And but she was saying that he does know about this stuff, and he really is working with them. But Hillary was making the point that Trump, is the guilty party, and I don't see how that works, because he was able to suggest that that this is. They asked him point blank, do you the host says, do you believe that foreigners should have an influence on other people's election? No, I don't believe that. And maybe that's a very honest statement. I would answer the same way. No, I don't believe in that. And then Hillary went on, but neither one of them, and I think Trump should have brought up the subject if he wants credibility with the people, is who's doing the rigging? The rigging, and what about our CIA? And what have we done for 100 years in Central America? What are we doing currently? How much are we involved? We're involved tremendously in elections. So would it be unheard of that there wouldn't be a bit of rigging here in this country? I sort of suspect that, just from my short experience of a few decades in politics, I've seen things happen in Texas. I've seen things happen in Louisiana and in Illinois. And there's a lot of mischief goes on. To believe that there's all elections are perfectly run, that is a myth.
Yeah. Well, the big headlines in all the papers this morning was the part where Trump said he's not sure that he'll recognize the ultimate outcome of the election because the system that he sees it is rigged, and so everyone had a collective gasp. He's undermining our democratic process. But the part you're talking about is interesting because Hillary flat out, point blank said Trump is Putin's puppet. Putin is doing his best to get him elected. And if that doesn't undermine the legitimacy of the election, I don't know what does either.
No, that's right.
The idea that if he's president, he won't even be legitimate because he'll be acting as an agent of the foreign power. So they're both guilty. But you have a great point about rigging elections, and we actually have a little graphic that we'll put up. This is Michael Hayden, who was the director of the NSA. He was at the Heritage Foundation recently, and look what he said. I have to admit, my definition of what the Russians did in hacking the Democratic National Committee is unfortunately honorable state espionage, he said at the Heritage Foundation. A foreign intelligence service getting the internal emails of a major political party in of a foreign adversary? Game on. That's what we do. By the way, I would not want to be in an American court of law and be forced to deny that I never did anything like that as director of the NSA.
we've talked about this a lot, about our CIA, and we shouldn't be doing this and propping up dictators. But I never thought we would get support from Hayden. But he's not in office right now. But I guess he still has to watch his back since he knows how the CIA operates. But that is pretty strong. But that's a powerful point. And it's the hypocrisy which is so bad that, and that's why I thought that Trump had the opportunity to jump on this. And of course, she would stick to her guns. Well, it's you guys working with the Russians and Putin and Assange, and you're rigging the elections in this manner. But there's a lot of rigging going on ordinarily, and it's been going on for a long time. I think in some ways the media is a participant in this, and I think they're a participant in the deep state. I think there's some rigging that goes on when you see the neocons come together. Doesn't it seem strange to some people that the Bushes could endorse Clinton? I mean, is that being a good Republican? But they hardly ever criticize him. But there's a lot of this stuff that long term, it doesn't matter the Trump versus Hillary arguments, because ultimately the foreign policy, even though there were subtle differences, one week as Trump says, let's get rid of NATO, let's make NATO pay, and last night I love NATO. Yeah. This sort of thing. And also, he wasn't real consistent about answering the question on troops going to Mosul.
Yeah, I think he... the story of Trump, for me at least, is a story of missed opportunities. He had an opportunity to make a great non-interventionist point against Hillary on this. Well, they shouldn't be messing with our elections, but we shouldn't mess with other people's elections. Would have been a great point. He didn't make it. The same is true with Iraq. He said, we never should have gone in there, but once we were in, we never should have left. Yeah. That's like if you're doing something that's stupid, you have to keep doing it forever. That doesn't make any sense.
What I am annoyed by is neither one gives a hoot about, well, the point is, we wouldn't be there if we followed the rules, and the rules say that the Congress and the people have to speak up and say, yes, we are declaring war against Iraq, and we're going to stay there until we have victory. And but it goes on and on. That's why we're in a war in Afghanistan 15 years and 13 years in Iraq. And we're looking at another fight. We're into Syria now. We're looking for a fight with China. It's on and on. But the people are never consulted. But the imperial presidency is so powerful that they just march on. And I don't see a real challenge to that, by either the Republicans or the Democrats or the party, or that this election will change anything. And the real control, I am convinced, is nonpartisan. Yeah. And what we want is we need bipartisanship. And I don't think it is bipartisan. I don't think it's Republican and Democrat. I think it's nonpartisan. It's financial interests. It's money. It's profits. Military-industrial complex. It has a lot to do with who gets bailed out. The banks get bailed out in a crisis. Who gets the benefits when they're spending a lot of money? Yeah. And lo and behold, whether you're Bernie Sanders or a libertarian, we know that the middle class is getting wiped out. But the explanation on why the middle class is being wiped out is a different story. But see, they don't deal with this. And I see that there's no effort on either side to really cut spending. Yeah. See, when Trump was pushed on spending, he says, deficit won't go up with mine because I have a great jobs program and the people are going to make a lot of money and pay a lot of taxes. Yeah. Well, that's just a myth. And so I think this whole thing is another distraction about Putin is interfering in our elections, and therefore he is a monster, and that's where the problem is. But Hayden has it right. If this could possibly be true that they are, well, so be it. Yeah. We're pretty good at this too.
You talk about we're able to continue to go to wars because we don't go in the right way, and that's definitely right. But I think the other side of that same argument is that after we go into a war like Iraq and we found out that it was based on lies, the people who made the case were lying, the fact that they never suffer any punishment allows them to continue. I was looking this morning on TV, Bill Kristol was on, the great expert. He was one of the great liars who lied us into the war. There's no punishment for these people. That's the one thing. And the other thing with the media, what you said earlier, I watched the post-debate coverage on NBC. And what did they do? They finished the debate. Then they went to their experts who all got together and said how great Hillary did and how she won. And then they went and they interviewed Hillary's campaign chairman, John Podesta, and asked him how great Hillary was and how she won. And this is not to defend Trump, but this is to say how the media frames the issue. And it does sound like it's a rigged thing.
But Hillary had some facts that she put out there. I hope they follow up on these facts because he threw it out. He didn't have the answers, and it would have been pretty good. I mean, you'd have to be really astute to be able to refute this. But she says, what, 9 intelligent agencies? 17. Yeah. Boy, I didn't know we had so many. But we sure are an intelligent nation. With all that, we should figure out how to stay out of war. But they're always trying to figure out how to put 17 agencies come up, and they support Hillary Clinton's position because it says that Putin really is involved. It's the Russians' fault. Yeah. How could she be wrong on this? Do you think has there been any facts checks on this? Let's see if that'll happen today.
Believe it or not, I've noticed an article in the National Review this morning, which I very rarely read. But Fred Fleitz is a former CIA official, and he had actually a pretty good piece in the National Review. He said that, no, Hillary, you're wrong. It wasn't 17 agencies. It was only 2 agencies, the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Homeland Security. And they came out with a statement that didn't say, we have evidence Russia hacked us. Russia did it. All they said is that the hacks are, quote, consistent with methods and motivations of Russian-directed methods. And according to Fleitz, who's been in the business, said this is a long way from really having evidence. And what he pointed out is it looks like the CIA was politicized. There was pressure put on them to come up with a report like this just a month before the election that did objectively help one candidate significantly.
Yeah, and that happened, of course, before Iraq, how they had to adjust the intelligence to the war, especially with the British, but Americans did the same thing. And that was part of the lying that you just, mentioned, involving Cheney and the rest in order to get us involved. And that, unfortunately, there's a lot of rigging going on, even if it's different from the petty crime of rigging and going and stealing 100 votes here or 100 votes there. But the rigging is done in a philosophic way. It's a power struggle. It's vicious, and they destroy people. Sometimes they kill people. But what about the destruction of messengers? If somebody comes along, frequently the messenger is the problem. And I think that right now, I think Assange is pretty amazing that he still survives, that he's survived physically, and he survives with a technology. And yet they said, well, he stole this information. Well, I think our government stole our information. They have all our information. Why aren't we allowed to steal back a little bit of information for the people? And they said, well, he's going to be charged with espionage. But I didn't know a foreigner gets charged with espionage. I would have to check the technicalities. I mean, they might charge him with a crime of violence against us or something. But I think that is what's going to continue to go on. If you're on to anything, you suffer a lot of consequences. So sometimes you hear people that are very, very popular, and even in entertainment and different things, and they come up with a political statement which is contrary to PC, political correctness. And all of a sudden, they're the worst people in the world you can't imagine. And, this whole thing of this challenge, people want to believe what they want to believe. This whole idea, I think that those charges against Trump, 30 years ago? And all these terrible things happen on an airplane in first. Even if I don't even want to defend his character or anything else, the argument is so perverse and so weird. And yet the media loves it. Oh, yes. And nobody else they never complained to anybody else. But all of a sudden, this is enough. And the pollsters say, ever since this information came out, these 9 women have doomed, the Trump case. And once again, it's the use of sexual innuendos.
Yeah, that has a lot. Same with Assange. That's what he's facing going back to Sweden. The other thing we talked about earlier is the hypocrisy of both the left and the right. And that's why I have to say our philosophy is attractive, which is that openness for government, privacy for us. Because now you have the left who was championing Assange when he was showing things about the Bush administration and the crimes they committed. Now they're saying he's got to be taken care of. Even Hillary said we need to drone him. They hate him. And now people like Hannity, who were damning him and condemning him back then, are speaking very highly of him. So it's only if you hurt the guy I don't like and help the guy I do like.
Well, and this makes the case for Assange being more fair and more objective. He releases everything and lets people sort it out rather than going through and picking, 15 things that could hurt Hillary and one thing that could hurt Trump or something like that and say he's rigging. But he puts it out there. And that's unlike, some of the other releases of information came out in bits and pieces and were direct, and they weren't by dumps. Yeah. And I think what Assange is doing is more heroic. It'll be interesting and fascinating what's going to happen in the next year, 2 or 3. We don't know what's going to happen to Snowden, and we know what has happened to others. Have gone to jail with a lot less infractions and saying, "Oh, he's no whistleblower. He told us the truth, and we're not interested in the truth." So lies are treasonous, when you have an empire. So you got to obey the empire. And the biggest job we have is trying to figure out who's in charge of the empire. Is the deep state monolithic? One guy sitting up there giving orders. I don't believe that. But they do come together when they have common interests. Just like, the dictatorship of the majority, which we have. You bring a special interest together who want to take from the people who produce and give to the special interest. Well, who are they? Well, the banks and corporations, the military-industrial complex, the media, all of this. But that'll cause a revolution. So you got to throw some crumbs to the poor. But they're together, and there's not one person, but there's probably sort of like a gentleman unwritten agreement that will come together. And I saw this in Washington all the time. Oh, yeah. That when the budget, since it never gets passed until the end, and then there's a dump on the budget. And I'm sure people like Pelosi and Boehner, they'd get together. Okay, I will take this, you get that. And they divide it up, and they pass it up, and each one got what they want. But the reason things are different now is that we're not as rich as we used to be. We're not as productive. The debt is too big. The system isn't functioning. And they don't work this into this fact that our wealth is leaving our country. Our jobs are leaving our country. But there's still one thing that holds it together, and that's a faith and confidence that the U.S. dollar will bail us all out. And there's a big bubble out there called a bond bubble with interest rates very low, and it's being built, and that's what's holding it together. But there's been some reports now to show what's happening with the holdings of these foreign holdings of our debt, and especially in China. It's starting to dip, and they're not buying. So somebody has to end up buying this. So there is an end to coming. There will be an end to this, and this deep state will be exposed. But you're not going to sort it out and say, well, we're going to destroy the control of the media and all these things. What we have to do is replace it with different principles.
For all the ugliness of this election, as you said when we started, we'll be glad it's over. I think there's one silver lining, and I think people have started to really wake up and see that the media lies to them, that the system is rigged, that the parties are rigged. And I think that's a good thing for your philosophy, for our philosophy.
Yeah. I think so. And I think it is very important for the people to realize that the lying is being told. And we have to have credible answers to the problems. And I believe the non-aggressive principle, the libertarian philosophy, is the only answer that can offer any solution to the ruthlessness of authoritarianism. The only philosophy that can answer the the impasse that we're at today because of productivity going down and debt going up, a foreign policy that is in total failure. And I think this is epitomized and demonstrated. And we see it in this debate, in this contest, which is supposed to be, the issue, and the election is going to save the civilization. And yet they're missing the whole point because they're part of it. They're not talking about changing the philosophy of government. What should the role of government be? Should the role of government be for passing out largesse and punishing one group against another, colluding with the different groups to pile up on other people, print money forever? Now, it's all coming to an end, and that is good. And I think the credibility of governments are very, very low, and I think that's very, very healthy. And we just need to restore a confidence that individuals, free people, are quite capable of taking care of themselves. Not perfectly, but I'll tell you one thing for sure. A lot bigger, a lot better than any authoritarian government can do, because we've tested that for literally hundreds, if not thousands of years, and we are getting a taste of it right now in the format which is called interventionism and Keynesianism and central bankism, foreign interventionism, and it is ending. And therefore, it gives us a great opportunity to make our case for liberty and for peace. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.